Buddy Roemer served as a U.S. congressman from 1981 to 1988 and served as governor of Louisiana from 1988 to 1992. He is a Republican candidate for the presidential nomination of his party, and one of his platforms is getting the big money out of politics. The website is Buddy Roemer. That's Roemer, BuddyRoemer.com. Governor, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carl, and thanks for spelling my name, man. I need that.
Roemer, BuddyRoemer.com.
It's like they asked me in New Hampshire, Buddy who?
Yeah, well, you're not a buddy who on our show. Our folks know you. And I want to start with this, Governor, that when you were in the House in the 1980s, you made a decision way back then not to accept large campaign donations. So this is not a new issue for you.
No, this is a lifetime issue with me. I grew up in a state that was corrupt, Carl. I mean, I love Louisiana, and I'm not putting it down. But politically, you know, we had a string of governors go to prison. We had district attorney generals, legislators. It was a culture of wink and nod. It was a culture of not what you knew, but who you knew. Mm-hmm. That's how you advanced. And when I ran for governor, we had 12.8% unemployment. Our school teachers were the worst paid in America. You couldn't drive the roads. Our bond rating was the worst in America. And so I ran with no PAC money, no super PACs, full disclosure, $100 limits, and I said, let's attack corruption. I beat a guy who never lost a race, been elected governor 3 times, had raised $20 million to beat me. We raised less than $1 million, and we beat him in the first primary. I mean, it was over. So I think money is necessary in politics, but when it comes from special interest, it corrupts the system. Mm-hmm. And when I looked at Washington this year, Carl, after 20 years being out of politics, I said, you know, it looks a lot like Baton Rouge. It looks like who you know is more important than what you know. It looks like a place where a small business family with real needs cannot get in line because the special interests are ahead of them. Yep. And I call that corrupt, so I decided to run.
Governor, if you believe the polls, the front runner for the nomination of your party, Newt Gingrich, yesterday, George F. Will called Newt Gingrich, quote, a classic rental politician, unquote, which I thought was a great phrase. This is a guy, Newt Gingrich, that got paid $1.6 million to lobby Freddie Mac. And he's positioning himself, as you know, as the great outsider. These are the kinds of things that people, Republican, Democrat, or Independent in this country have had enough of.
Yes, well, the parties are alike in one regard, Carl. I've been in both parties. I was 20 years a Democrat. I've been 20 years a Republican, and they overlap each other. Mm-hmm. One area that they overlap in is the addiction to money. They spend full time raising money. And you know, I'll pick on Mr. Obama because he's our president, and he is my president. But when you did bank reform, Carl, and you didn't change too great to fail.
Absolutely agree with you.
And you didn't raise capital ratios, you didn't reinstore Glass-Steagall, and you go to Wall Street a month afterwards at $35,800 a ticket, sponsored by Goldman Sachs. It is corrupt. And the Republicans are no better. They are running a race with Obama as to who can take the most money from a few. Right. I mean, Mitt Romney, friends, put a super PAC together for the purpose of taking $1 million check from one of them, and they disbanded it a week later, and Romney first denied getting the money. It is a joke.
Our guest, Republican presidential candidate Buddy Roemer. You can learn more at BuddyRoemer.com. Governor, 9 senators, including our own Jeff Merkley here in Oregon, have introduced a constitutional amendment that would overturn the horrible Citizens United decision of the Supreme Court that will say corporations are not people and money does not equal speech. I looked at poll after poll since this awful decision. The great majority of Americans agree with us. What's it going to get to get something like this done?
You need a president to lead. I mean, this is what America is. We're a collection of individuals who love our families, who want to be free, who want to have opportunity, who want their kids to do better than they did. This is not magical. This is not about a party. What we need in this country is a president who forgets that he's a Democrat or forgets that she's a Republican and leads. And campaign reform, that would be some term limits that are reasonable on Congress. Disallowing them to have a special retirement program where they get rich for life, disallowing them to have a medical package that nobody else in America has, disallowing them to take corporate special interest money, and it can be done constitutionally. I mean, I would start, my first bill would be about limiting PACs to the same as individuals. That would be $2,500. Would be about full disclosure. Number 3, it would be about 48-hour reporting. You can't hide money for 120 days till after the election. 48-hour reporting. It would be no registered lobbyist can bring a check or work on a fundraiser. You can either lobby or fundraiser. You fundraise, you can't be both. And finally, it would mean criminal penalties for congressmen and presidents who violate the law. That's what we need as a first step. Second step is a constitutional amendment to restore broad, fair, open, fully disclosed, and broadly limited campaigns. We need to set America free again.
Our guest is Republican presidential candidate Buddy Roemer, Buddy Roemer, R-O-E-M-E-R, BuddyRoemer.com. You know, Governor, I've been doing this for 5 years on this show, and the one issue I brought up my first week here, which I found paramount among all others, is getting the big money out of politics. So I'm glad to see you speaking up on this. The last time I read the Constitution, it talked about a representative democracy. In Federalist 52, it talked about a Congress, quote, dependent on the people alone, unquote. It didn't say dependent on the funders.
Absolutely. Well, let me tell you what the Supreme Court said in Citizens United. I mean, let's be very specific. They said that corruption was the greatest threat to a democracy. They said the appearance of corruption was a threat equal to corruption. They went on then to say, it's funny how their logic went, that direct contributions can be limited and required fully disclosed. Congress just needs to act. And then they closed by saying, if an independent association collects unregulated money, they're free to do that because there is not the appearance of corruption. So it's very interesting, Carl. If you read that opinion, which I have done, you walk through it and you're okay with everything they say until right at the end. Here's what they say. Mm-hmm. A third party can give unlimited amount of money because there's no appearance of corruption because the third party is independent. Well, what the Supreme Court needs to do is look at the facts in their next ruling. Are super PACs independent? Mitt Romney's super PACs are run by his former chief of staff, his former campaign coordinator. Barack Obama's super PACs are run by his former campaign coordinator. Rick Perry's 7 super PACs are run by his chief of staff. Hell, Mitt Romney went to the fundraiser for his super PAC. If the Supreme Court test is independence, they failed the test, and they are illegal, Carl.
Right. I agree with you. Governor, one last question. Again, we're with the governor, Buddy Roemer, former governor of Louisiana, now running for president on the Republican side, BuddyRoemer.com. There is no Republican or Democrat running for president who is willing to take on this idea of China believing in free trade. China does not believe in free trade.
China cheats. I've been to China. This is not something I'm making up, Carl. I have been there many, many, many times. Why did I go? Did I go on the government check? No. I went on my private check representing my bank, which I've built, about $1 billion bank, that represents manufacturing in Louisiana, trying to sell products in China. You can't get to first base. They're cheap products, built by children in many cases. built by forced labor in many cases, built by prison labor in many cases, roll across our country with no impediments, and it takes us 9 years to get an American-made product in China. Trade ought to be fair. That's my position. Not free, because it's baloney.
Governor,
free doesn't exist. Fair is what we're at.
Governor, I agree with you, and I promised that was the last question, but I've got one more. Why will the Republicans not let you in these debates, and is that going to change?
I hope it changes. I mean, I might be the only president ever elected who's not in a single debate.
Well, you go get them.
It's the darndest thing I've ever seen. Maybe they don't want to talk about the money. Maybe it's because I mentioned Mitt Romney's name, John Huntsman's name, Newt Gingrich's name, Rick Perry's name. Maybe it's because I mention them by name. But you know something? I don't think they're personally corrupt. I think they bought into a system built by the devil. It's a system of corruption, and they said, oh, let me get elected, and then I'll change it, buddy. I have a word for that. It's called BS.
Yep.
You need to run the way you'll serve.
That's right.
And I want a president free to lead.
People who get to a political office, no matter how high or low, on a system are not going to change that system. Governor, thank you for spending time with us. We've been talking to Republican presidential candidate Buddy Roemer. You can learn more at buddyroemer.com. Governor, thank you so much.
Thank you, Carl. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. When we come back, your reaction, 503-248-0620, 1-866-452-0620. Republican presidential candidate Buddy Roemer just with us. Let's get reactions, starting with Chris in Portland. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, yeah, he's, I don't know if he can call himself a Republican anymore. He's the kind of Republican Eisenhower might recognize.
Yep.
Or we could call him a Republican in a field of fascists.
Yep.
But I think I wouldn't mind hearing some of that stuff come out of Obama's mouth too.
Yeah, you got it, Chris. And on the key issue of restoring integrity to the system, to the vote, and getting the lobbyists and big money out of Congress, Buddy Roemer is right on. Mike in Vancouver, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, listening to Buddy Roemer this morning, it reminded me how it used to be possible to find common ground between Democratic and Republican politics. I appreciate that you limited basically the scope of the interview to issues where we could pretty much agree, your core audience, with his positions. It would have been curious to see where they do differ. I'm sure Buddy is on board with a lot of the Republican platform that most of the audience would reject. But it was so good to hear him talk and certainly sounded very reasonable.
Right, and that's exactly why I did it, Mike. And Buddy Roemer does have some issues socially that are a little bit more progressive than the general Republicans out there. But I wanted to, and we got to move on, Mike, but thank you. I really wanted to go to the core of where we could find common ground and make it clear that it is possible to find common ground with so many people, the large majority of people saying no, corporations are not people and money doesn't equal speech. Susie in Portland, welcome to the show.
Good morning. My concern about a whole concept with Mr. Roemer is that he sounds a lot like Barack Obama and a lot of the Democrats, that when they go in, they have all these really great ideas and they're right, but you run up against the Republican machine that has been there for so long that he doesn't have, I don't think anybody has any chance right now as a Republican to go in and make any change any more than Barack Obama has. You've got a Congress that just says no.
But Susie, here's the point, and I'm glad you brought that up, is that next year, all 435 members of the House are up. A third of the Senate is up next year. And we've got to take this beyond, and I've said this from the beginning. It all starts from state legislatures on up, and we have to understand that we can clean house in the Congress next year. And that's why it's so important that the Occupy Wall Street 99% movement is focused on more than just a presidential race, that it's getting progressives and people who want the money out of the system at all levels, including the state. George in Tampa, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Hey, I got a win-win for the Democrats. If we all change our party to Republican and then vote for
Buddy,
Buddy in the primaries. Then when it's Buddy against Obama, we can't lose.
Well, we can't lose on that. Well, on that issue, hopefully. That's, I think you got an interesting point there. Rush Limbaugh has always tried to get Republicans to re-register and cause havoc in Democratic primaries. We have that opportunity. I wouldn't do a Limbaugh-esque thing, but, there are a lot of states that allow you to cross over. JJ in Atlanta, welcome.
Hello. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on Buddy. I grew up in South Mississippi watching Louisiana politics. And you have to realize Louisiana politics is a performance art. I mean, the general gives that example today.
Right.
There was a governor, a couple of governors before Buddy, that actually built a bridge across the Mississippi River that had no roads going.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's classic. It's classic. They'll build and give contracts to on-ramps that go to no bridges.
When I was in Tulane, I asked a guy from Lafayette, Louisiana, how in the world they selected governors in Louisiana. He said, he said, we know they're all crooks, all of them, and we want the one that will steal best.
Yeah, there you go.
And when I discovered that, then I was able to understand Louisiana politics.
Right. Well, Edwin Edwards went to jail on a number of counts, I believe, having to do with gambling, and I believe he was did the famous line of "I would only get in trouble if I were found in bed with a dead girl or a live boy." I believe it was Ed Edwards who said that. And by the way, that's the reason I asked that first question of Buddy Roemer about money and politics. For me, in studying Buddy Roemer, I know that back in his congressional days, in fact, Tip O'Neill said he was the only member of Congress that didn't accept PAC money back in the 80s. So at least getting the money out of politics, which Roemer has made core to his campaign, is not something that he's using in an opportunistic way. He stood for this back in the 80s.